evening of friendship between Russia and the South African Afrikaner community, the first of its kind in Johannesburg, South Africa.
I'm very grateful both to the Afrikaans community and to the Russian ambassador for opening up a chapter in history, and it's not only history, it's current life as well that I knew nothing about. Mr. Ambassador, firstly, thank you so much for joining us here tonight, and secondly, thank you for making me so sensitive not only to the history between Russia and the Afrikaans community, but also to the fact that it's a very important relationship today.
South Africa's Afrikaner or Boer community descends predominantly from Dutch settlers who arrived at the Cape of Good Hope in 1652. Until the country's first democratic elections in 1994, they dominated politics and agriculture. Today, they make up 6% of the population.
I think it's important for us to be a strong, loud and proud voice for that which we stand. And I thank the Russian students that are here tonight. I spent a month in your country and I found nothing but strength and a superb willingness to work together to a better future. I don't think we can say too much, but I don't think that we should be quiet about that which is happening in the world, and we should never stand back, and we should never forget our histories.
The Russian-Afrikaner friendship dates back to the beginning of the 1900s and the outbreak of the Second Anglo-Boer War. Nearly 300 Russian volunteers traveled thousands of kilometers to fight amongst the ranks of the Boer armies against the British.
Some 270 Russian volunteers fought in the ranks of the Boer armies. We know the names of many of them, above all Lieutenant Colonel and war journalist Yevgeny Maximov, Staff Captain Alexander Shulzhenko, and Captain Leo Pokrovsky.
Russian Red Cross and Russian Dutch ambulance units deployed in South Africa to provide medical assistance to Afrikaner combatants and civilians. Their actions are still revered more than a century on many descendants of some of those they helped.
My great-grandfather and 4 of his friends escaped, and they swam into the sea for 3.5 miles, and they were picked up by a Russian ship. Captain Vladimir Kisimov then hid them away, and they did a whole tour through Russia. And my great-grandfather and his friends were announced the royal guests of the Tsar's House of Russia by Tsar Nicholas II. But tonight is very important, I think, because as a somewhat, shall I say, controversial leader of many of the people of South Africa, who we colloquially call Boers, I need to pronounce that I am grateful that these kinds of initiatives are flighted and that we finally, I think, have a platform to tell our story.
Although there are few cultural and linguistic ties between the countries, the Russian-Afrikaner friendship is as strong as ever. There is growing interest for the Russian language to be taught in South African universities.
And in 2019, I represented the Midvaal municipality at the BRICS International Municipal BRICS Conference in St. Petersburg. After that, I wrote a letter to the Moscow State University to point out that there is actually a need in South Africa for Afrikaners to be able to learn the Russian language. And I asked the Moscow State University if they would consider to establish a satellite campus of the Moscow State University in South Africa, and specifically in the Midvaal local municipal area, which is to the south of Johannesburg, to require students, foreign students who want to study in Russia, to have a good grasp of the Russian language. And as Paula pointed out, we have no university anymore in South Africa where you can study the Russian language.
South Africa was the first African nation to recognize the Russian Federation in December 1991 after the collapse of the Soviet Union.
I can tell you that the year 2023 marks the 31st anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations between Russia and South Africa. But personal contacts between Russians and South Africans had been actively developing for several centuries before this date.
South Africa's majority African National Congress government also has strong ties with Moscow for the assistance it led its fighters during the years of anti-apartheid struggle.